Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your very warm St. Lucia Labour Party welcome. Let me, first of all, recognize the presence of my friend, comrade, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, and the political leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, Dr. Kenny Anthony. Ministers of government and other members of the Parliament of St. Lucia, specially invited guests and our friends from the Diplomatic Corps, officers, delegates, members and well-wishers of the St. Lucia Labour Party, my dear friend from St. Kitts Labour Party, Mr. Carty. I bring you greetings from Roosevelt, Dominica, and the officers and members of the Dominica Labour Party. When I informed my colleagues that I'd been invited to address this conference today, they all spoke in one voice. Prime Minister, you have to go. You have to go to St. Lucia and stand in solidarity with our sister Labour Party. One stalwart of 60 years standing in the Dominica Labour Party said to me, Prime Minister, Labour is under threat. Your generation of leaders has to work together to keep the movement and the cause alive. That sentiment, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, is what has inspired my thinking as I reflected on what message I would bring to this grand conference today. Let's deal first with what we all know, comrades and friends, that we are living in very difficult and perilous times. We are in the throes of the worst economic depression, not depression, but depression known to man. When you reflect upon the challenges that we have confronted in the past 6 years as a region, it is absolute wonder that the economies of these small islands banded together as the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States are still afloat. We have done remarkable to be striving, and in some instances, thriving in these difficult times. I look around the table at the OAC's heads of government meetings, and what do I see? I see labor, comrades and friends. I see this wondrous labor movement in the Caribbean to which we have all subscribed. In so doing, I see the answer to the question of how have we done it? We have done it, ladies and gentlemen, because we have stuck in the main to the bedrock principles of labor. Many persons tend to take the reality and the simplicity of this statement for granted. But the last 4 years in particular have been particularly and especially challenging for the Eastern Caribbean states, given the known difficulties that sister CARICOM countries, such as Jamaica and Barbados in particular, have been experiencing. Labor has been at the helm in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Labor has been at the helm in St. Kitts and Nevis. Labor has been at the helm in Dominica. And labor was thankfully brought back in the nick of time in St. Lucia. Were Labour parties not at the helm in the majority of states in the sub-region at this crucial time in our developmental experience, only heaven knows the carnage that would have taken place with respect to our social policies and the lives and livelihoods of thousands. We walk a very thin and tight rope in the Caribbean between social upliftment and fiscal prudence. The economic purists would tell us we have a responsibility to do away with certain programs as a result of their drain on the national purse. They say you cannot afford this concession to the poor, and you need to do away with that benefit to the elderly. But those of us born and nurtured in the bosom of labor are inspired by the works of those who have preceded us. Very often, as the executive arms of government, we sit in cabinet meetings and reflect upon how the forefathers of this Caribbean labor movement would have handled a situation. Would they really have decimated the social sector in order to satisfy the folks in Washington? Would they really have reversed decades of progress made on behalf of the elderly and the most vulnerable in society? The answer to these questions is a resounding no. And that is why, in spite of the turbulent economic times in which we live, every single labor government in the Caribbean has stuck steadfast to the goal of balancing economic prudence with social responsibility. We know our economies are under threat. We know several of our social programs are seeming financial albatross around our necks. But how can we turn our backs on those who gave of their blood, sweat, and tears to build these societies? How can we remove the social safety net afforded the poor and dispossessed in our midst? Many of us in leadership positions in the labor movement were born into poverty. We grew up hard and we grew up difficult. But we made it because of the enlightened policies of E.T. Joshua of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, V.C. Bird of Antigua and Barbuda, Robert Lelwyn Bradshaw of St. Kitts and Nevis, E.O. Edward Oliver LeBlanc of Dominica, and your own George F.L. Charles of St. Lucia. They blazed the trail for Ralph Gonzalez, Denzel Douglas, Gaston Brown, Roosevelt Skerrit, and Dr. Kenny Anthony of St. Lucia. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, it is difficult and so heart-wrenching for any one of us to tear down those social safety nets and turn the backhand of time on the gains that have been made for and on behalf of the working people of the Eastern Caribbean. But my central message to you today, ladies and gentlemen, is not that. You know, and you knew all those things a long way. My simple words of admonition to you today, as a sister governing Labour Party in the Eastern Caribbean, is that Labour is the only party with the solutions to the serious challenges which confront our people. And therefore, if we love our country, we owe a duty to ensure that Labour remains in positions of influence and authority at the highest level at this critical juncture in our history. I am not saying we will not one day lose office. I'm not saying others will not one day be worthy of consideration. I am saying to this conference of the St. Lucia Labour Party today, and to Labour governments and Labour people around the region, that these economies and societies in the Eastern Caribbean need Labour now and need Labour to remain in office to see us safely through this period of difficult economic challenges. If these islands are to successfully emerge from the chasm of this global economic recession with our social safety nets intact, and if the poor, dispossessed, and elderly in our society are to be protected and be no worse off 10 years hence, the Labour parties of the Eastern Caribbean have got to band together and stay at the forefront of national policy decision-making. I am saying we have to remain loyal to the cause, spirit, and mission of Labour. I am saying we have to re-establish ourselves as the best hope in troubled times. I am saying we have to rally together to keep at bay those whose interests do not dovetail or even coincide with those for which the Labour movement was started and on which it flourished in the 1930s to 1970s. But you will ask, Comrade Skerrit, how do we do this in an environment where money is tight? How do we achieve this in a climate where we are battling to make ends meet and where we are barely able to maintain what we have, far less introduce new policies and concessions? In a single word, the answer to that question is education. Indeed, to be more precise, it's sensitization. The problem with some Labour governments in the region today is that they are performing miracles, but they are keeping the reality of this very close to the chest. Populations are not being made to know and understand the tremendous sacrifices that are being made in these difficult times to stave off the advice of those who say, in essence, throw the poor under the wheel. On a daily basis in the sub-region, for sure, leaders are having to dance around the advice and admonition of those who say, send home a few thousand workers, cut benefits to retirees, increase the rate of direct taxation, cut out the freeness, make parents and children contribute a little more to education, impose a handling fee at a general hospital, etc., etc., etc. We will be the most popular leaders among the international financial institutions and the international technocrats in the hemisphere were we to stick by the book and cut the social budget in half or altogether. But that is not how we were taught or indoctrinated by the fathers of this movement. This is not what inspired Ralph Gonsalves, Denzel Douglas, Roosevelt Skerrit, and or Dr. Kenny Anthony to enter the struggle several decades ago. We came from various professional backgrounds to join the cause of promoting and uplifting all echelons of society. Now today, you have poachers lurking around this region, entering politics for all the wrong reasons. You have them here in St. Lucia. In the case of Dominica, a man does not like Skerrit, so he worms his way into the leadership of his party, made it to take on and take out Skerrit. That's what some opposition leadership in these troubled times in the Caribbean have been reduced to. But as Labour parties in government at this time, we have to remain focused on the issues at hand. We do not envy those at the top who have plenty. We equally have nothing against the barons of big business thriving. But just as we do not believe there should be a cap on how much wealth some can amass, we also do not believe we should permit the lowering of the floor on which those at the bottom stand. Our founding fathers raised the floor for working people in the Eastern Caribbean, and as the heirs, we have a bonded duty to ensure that we remain in office with our hands fixed firmly on the plow to defend and maintain the gains that were made. Also, to effect continuing improvements to the quality of life of those in the lower and middle echelons of society. Comrades and friends, it is against that backdrop that we come now to what the late George Odlum would have called the red meat of the matter. How do we survive as Labour governments in this trouble and troubling times? The simple answer is we must stick close to the people. But of equal importance is the need for us to broaden our base and reach further into the bowels of society. It is not enough for some of us to yearn and settle for 52% of the popular vote in an election. It does not augur well if we but merely snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. We have to strive as Labour parties in the sub-region to return to the once pivotal designation of natural party of choice. We have to become and remain the people's parties. In this regard, there is work for both leadership and support base to undertake. Firstly, from the perspective of the party members and well-wishers, We have to recognize and appreciate that over the past 20 years, our natural support base has been eroded for various reasons and varying reasons. We have to reclaim that territory. We need to recognize that the votes of known Labour Party supporters alone are not enough to keep us in office. Yes, we have to reward loyalty. Yes, the pastor must christen his speak to them. Yes, we must ensure that those who suffered in the wilderness while their party was in opposition are given an opportunity to thrive and progress. But equally important, we need to safeguard against marginalizing those whose silent support also made our victories possible. We have to make our political homes welcoming and comfortable for those who wish to cross the River Jordan. Just as in the case in Dominica, a traditional Workers' Party supporter in St. Lucia who no longer supports or wishes to support the Workers' Party must not forever be dubbed as a flabbo. Some of us in Labour make it too difficult for persons to become comrades. The doors of Labour in Eastern Caribbean must become more welcoming to non-traditional support if these governments we have the honor to lead are to stay afloat. Just as Labour supporters come and go from the Labour Party at will, so too is the likelihood of a high attrition rate into and away from the Flambeau Party, especially in times such as this, when the leadership and candidate bases are so weak. Some call it the politics of inclusion. And of course, if Stevenson King wants to join the Labour Party, we should welcome him to the Labour Party. I say some call it the politics of inclusion. I see it as the politics of people and the politics of nation building. Labour parties in the sub-region need to strive to become the natural and national parties of choice. We need to strive to create an umbrella sufficiently large for every single resident of the country to fit. We need to attract people to Labour through both our policies and our behaviors. Labour does not belong to the few hundred that gather each year for the party conference. Labour does not belong only to those who gladly don their red shirts in support of party and candidates. We must reach that level of consciousness in Eastern Caribbean where and when Labour is made accessible and welcoming to every single resident and well-wisher. If, as activists, you try to identify the source of votes you got in a constituency last election, you will discover that there is about 20% of such said voters you simply cannot with certainty locate. It is those 20% mystery votes that help to give us a victory last election and that are needed to secure us another victory next time around. Therefore, we must avoid the notion that Labour supporters and well-wishers are only those who walk around flying a flag. This is not to say that the flag wavers are unimportant. Indeed, they are very important, but flag flying by itself is not sufficient for victory. Comrades, when you see your leader and parliamentary representatives do certain things that appear strange and politically nonsensical to you, I urge you today to give them the benefit of the doubt. Ascribe to them a level of political competence and astuteness to make informed decisions. You may not know everything about everyone. Therefore, it is advisable sometimes that you take for granted that your leaders know what they're doing. You must not and should not question every decision Prime Minister Kenny Anthony and his cabinet takes. You must give them always the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes Labour people are too quick to criticize its own government. By the same token, Political leaders must reflect an understanding and an appreciation for the sensitivities and insecurities of those who feel let down. When seeming poachers glaringly benefit from policies and practices of the party and government at the apparent expense of those who had been in the trenches for years. In instances such as this, the base has every right to be concerned. As leaders, it's a delicate rope we walk, but walk it we must. I said earlier, the key to all this is sticking close to our people. National political leadership in 2014 is a 14-hour-a-day job. There is the tendency by some new politicians, for I dare not use the word young, to relate to political service as they did in the law or the professional practice. That is not going to work in 2014. People must feel the love. They must sense and know that you are aware and that you care. Persons close to the party, such as those assembled here today, must not read of major policy changes and decisions first in the newspaper. Adequate mechanisms must be established for them to be consulted initially, and then once decisions are made, to be informed and to be armed with the necessary information to go out, spread the word, and defend the cause. In this regard, Labour parties in the sub-region need to look urgently at the reformatting of the operational structures. Time was when the bulk of our work as Labour parties could and would have been carried on by volunteers. I am here to say today that era has ended. Just as we strive each day as ministers to modernize and revolutionize the appearance and function of government and our ministerial offices, so must we do the same for political party secretariat and respective constituency offices. There is need for greater vibrancy and efficiency at the party level. We need to put systems in place to better serve our members. Dissemination of information must no longer be a rare treat. It must become a staple in our daily diet. Several Labour Party governments in the sub-region are losing the public perception battle because they keep their goings on as parties in government too close to the chest. A prime minister or minister of government speaks, and it is assumed that the entire country has heard, has understood, and is so guided, when in reality, the information dissemination process should only have just begun. For the most part, as Labour parties in this region, we are not winning friends and influencing people as we should, because we are not properly marketing the tremendous job we are doing to keep the economies of these islands afloat and to maintain a deserving quality of life for our people. And when I look at St. Lucia and the challenges that you have, I do not understand how is it Kenny Anthony has not sent one public officer home as we speak. But Kenny Anthony is not telling us exactly how he is doing, what he's doing in St. Lucia. He is performing a miracle not to send one public officer home in St. Lucia. So I'm here today to tell you it's time to get back to basics. A few years ago, Tony Blair successfully marketed what is dubbed in Great Britain as New Labour. I am calling today for a return to true Labour. I am not saying anything is wrong with the New Labour concept, but I am wedded to the philosophies of the founding fathers and pioneers of the Labour struggle. I want Labour parties in the sub-region to rekindle the passion for fighting against and staving off the threat posed to advances made on behalf of working people. In this regard, we must unmask and expose the pretenders and the predators. There are some curious individuals lurking around the Eastern Caribbean in the name and under the guise of opposition politicians. We in the respective Labour parties must sensitize our populations to just who they are and the grave threat that some pose to the social and economic recovery of these islands. I want Labour parties in the sub-region to open their doors and be more welcoming to outsiders, fence-sitters, and political cross-dressers. We must become the natural party of choice in these troubled times. We successfully piloted the region through 7 very difficult years, and we are more than capable of leading it back to the sustainable growth and prosperity. These times are challenging times, but they're also exciting times. I have every confidence in the capacity of these islands to weather the economic storms. I have every confidence in the ability of Dr. Anthony and his cabinet of ministers to successfully navigate the treacherous terrain. We need now, as Labour parties, to blow our trumpets louder. We must make them known our achievements and explain the difficulties we're encountering along the way. The philosophy of Labour is best for the Eastern Caribbean at this time, and we must not be afraid to say it. Those who say all parties are the same and all politicians are the same are not seeing distinguishing features in philosophy. We need to do something about that. We need to get back to and inculcate the philosophy of Labour's struggle to new and emerging leaders. And as we remain anchored by our philosophy, we must adapt our policies and our way of doing things to reflect the realities of the second decade of the 21st century. Leadership is not easy. It never was. It requires always that we remain faithful to the people that we lead and their welfare and well-being. And in so, remembering and living the credo as members of this great movement, we must never forget the words of John C. Maxwell, and I quote, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." End of quote. As long as we not only talk the talk, but walk the walk, and remember why we are here in the first place, we shall emerge at the other end, able to recite those immortal words from the book of Timothy, and I quote, "We have fought the good fight, we have finished the race, we have kept the faith," end of quote. Comrades, friends, I want to address a matter that has been in discussion here in St. Lucia for some time. And that has to do with St. Lucia's decision to join on to Petrocaribe and Alba. I will say to you that this is one of the best decisions the St. Lucia Labour Party has taken in a very long time. And I can speak from the Dominican experience. I can tell you that Alba and Petrocaribe have been good to Dominica. I can speak to several projects and programs financed by Alba and Petrocaribe. And I will tell you this. When we went down as heads of government to Venezuela to discuss and to sign the Petrocaribe agreement, I recall P.J. Patterson, the then Prime Minister of Jamaica, saying to me that there is no way he's going to leave Venezuela without signing this Petrocaribe agreement because he understands the importance of it to the economy of Jamaica. The World Bank and the IMF and some told us that it will affect our debt. But today the World Bank and the IMF are saying to us that the Petrocaribe agreement is one of the best things and we must keep to it because of the revenue it's bringing to our economies. And Hudson, unfortunately, Prime Minister Anthony lost elections and was not able to sign on to Petrocaribe in the months ahead. Had St. Lucia signed on to Petrocaribe back then, I can tell you, you would have had access to about $300 million now at 1% interest. 1% interest to assist with the challenges confronting St. Lucia today. But as the saying goes, rather late than never. And regards to Alba, all sorts of innuendo, all sorts of misinformation will be peddled by the opposition here in St. Lucia. But as we speak in Dominica, I can speak to about over $50 million worth of projects totally financed by ALBA, presently undergoing in Dominica. So St. Lucians and St. Lucia stand to benefit from this Petrocaribe and ALBA arrangement. And I can tell you, with the size of the St. Lucian economy, Petrocaribe is going to be a windfall for St. Lucia. A windfall for the people of St. Lucia. So do not allow yourselves as Labour Party people. Because back in Dominica, when I joined on ALBA, there was tremendous criticism. Even within my own party sometimes. People question, why is it that we should join ALBA? But today, every single Dominican living inside and outside Dominica will tell you how great ALBA and Petrocaribe have been to the people of Dominica. I am not here to meddle myself in a domestic issue. I am speaking here as a friend of St. Lucia and as a friend of the people of St. Lucia. Because in these troubling and difficult times, in these very difficult times, you need friends. You need friends. Driving down from Roosevelt, coming down here and seeing the damage to your infrastructure, you need millions of dollars. And those who oppose ALBA and those who oppose Petrocaribe must tell Kenny Anthony where will St. Lucia get the monies to respond to this challenge. Should he go to the banks at 12% interest? I can tell you, public officers listening and the country here listening, that with ALBA funds and with Petrocaribe funds, I have been able to create mortgages at interest rates of 4 and 5% in Dominica. 4 and 5% in Dominica. I have been able to put monies at the development bank for farmers to borrow at 0 and 2% in Dominica. With ALBA funds, I have been able to outfit every single police station and police department with vehicles and equipment and tools of trade. With ALBA funds, we're constructing an abattoir in excess of 10 million EC dollars. With ALBA funds, we're presently constructing a coffee factory worth over $10 million in Dominica. So I'm telling you, do not let anybody fool you, and to create in your minds this mystery and this evil about ALBA and Petrocaribe. I say to St. Lucia, go for it and take advantage of these two instruments of integration and cooperation. And I say to you finally, that you have a Prime Minister who is the envy of not only the Caribbean, but the entire world. Kenny Anthony is one of the most respected leaders in the world. And he must never allow anybody, especially the enemies of labor, to put in your minds any notion, any negative notion about Kenny Anthony and the St. Lucia Labour Party. And I will tell you this, when the Commonwealth Secretariat needed someone to head that institution, they came to Kenny Anthony. He was then in opposition, and Kenny told them that he is staying in St. Lucia to fight for and on behalf of the working people of St. Lucia, and he is not interested. And he is not interested in that job. I will tell him today that both the government of the UK and both the government of Canada asked me 2 weeks ago whether Kenny would be interested in that position today. I told them I told him, don't even bother go ask Kenny that question, because I will answer for him. He is not interested. He is staying here in St. Lucia with his people to help build this country. And I will say to you, you made an error in the election before the last one. You had something good going in St. Lucia. You had a good government in St. Lucia. And you went and you removed them and you brought in a government. And that government and that party has wrecked the situation in St. Lucia. Kenny now has to come back and build this country and to fix the problems. I urge you to give him all the support here in St. Lucia, to take the necessary action required to rebuild and restore confidence in the economy of St. Lucia. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless St. Lucia. God bless the St. Lucia Labour Party. Thank you very much.
We've asked the Prime Minister to receive this gift from all of us. Awuj! 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 Now we'll cool you off a bit. We will bring on. We'll bring on Itation. Is Itation there? Come, let's deal with this quickly. And the fundamentals